Let's open up God's word together before Jonny comes to explain it to us. Mark chapter 12, verses 13 to 17. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? Should we pay it or shouldn't we?" But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. "Why are you trying to trap me?" he asked. "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." They brought the coin and he asked them, "Whose image is this and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. And then Jesus said to them, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." And they were amazed at him.
Great. I think I just need to come down a little bit in volume, Andrew, if that's all right. Have you ever been asked in a job interview, what would you do if you won the lottery tomorrow? What would you do? Now have a think in your head. If you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you do? You never asked me in my job interview for my role here. Probably a good thing. But what would you do? Apparently it's a fairly common interview question, and it's designed to catch people out. Because the real answer that most of us would give, and I imagine that the answer most of us gave in our heads, is that we would give up work straight away. And that we'd go live on an island by the beach somewhere, or something like that, or whatever's your dream. A hut in the mountains or whatever it might be. You'd give up work straight away. You'd take life easy. But in a job interview, that implies that you hate your job, or you hate the job that you're trying to win, and you'd give it up in a heartbeat if you could. And why would any potential employer take on someone who is desperate not to be working if given the opportunity? So it's a trick question, isn't it? It's designed to trap you. And trap questions like that, they are tricky to get around. We see it with politicians. Have you watched them on the TV when they've been asked in an interview a very direct question, and they've been trained to get around the question by their PR company? So they sidestep it with the phrase that we've all heard, "What I can say is ... and then they go on to talk about what they want to talk about rather than what they've been asked about. The Boris Johnson way of getting out of tricky situations like this is to pronounce words in a very weird way. I saw this on a montage video clip, very amusing, the other day. He goes like this: vegan sausage rolls, Baloo passports, and flapjacks. Just to get the interviewer to throw them off their front foot. That's one way of getting out of it. The other way is the Gareth Bale way. When he was asked, was it a year or two ago after losing a game, right after the sadness of losing that game, and they asked him if this was going to be his last game for Wales, and in a huff he just walked off and refused to answer. That's another way of getting out of a tricky question. Well, in today's question to question, Jesus avoids all of these ways of getting out of tricky questions that probably make it look worse. Despite this question being a deliberate trap, he has his own way of getting out of it. And the question he's asked is, should we pay taxes or not? And his question in return, why are you trying to trap me? Now, I'm sure we'd have all preferred Jesus' answer just to be, no, you don't have to pay taxes, don't worry about it. And then the rest of us could all just take home that extra 20% or whatever it is we pay on tax rather than pay it. But that wasn't the right answer. And Jesus, in his context, he couldn't just say yes, but nor could he just say no. And in order to understand this, you need to understand the politics that were going on around this time. You see, the Jewish people were not an independent nation at the time. The Romans, they had conquered pretty much everywhere. If you know your Roman history, they owned basically the known world at the time. And that included the land of Israel. And they enforced their rule and their law and their way of doing everything upon the Jewish people to a large extent, although they did give them a large degree of autonomy as well. But most of the Jews, they hated that. They hated the Romans. They hated living in suppression to the Romans. Think about what it must have been like to be Welsh around 500 years ago or so, and you've got a flavor of what they felt like. I say 500 years ago, many people still feel the same today. There we are. I'm going to get myself in hot water if I say any more. But a couple of decades before this conversation, they'd introduced this tax, this system of tax that went to the Roman government, the tax that it's referring to there, the poll tax, the imperial tax. And you can read about this tax system that came into play from a Jewish historian who wrote about this time period called Josephus. So with all that in mind, with all of the political wranglings that are going on, the feeling of the Jews towards the Romans, with all that in mind, well, if Jesus says no, then the Roman government aren't going to be happy, are they? They're going to label him a rebel, an insurrectionist. They might even arrest him. They might even have him punished for saying, no, you don't have to pay your taxes. But if Jesus says yes, then the majority of his Jewish hearers are not going to be happy about that. They would immediately disregard his message. So Jesus cannot say yes, but nor can he say no, not without more explanation. And it's not just about Jesus trying to save his own skin or retain his popularity. It's about what is right and what is truthful in all of this. So rather than just giving a direct answer, he gets them to do something for him. He asks them, go get me a coin. And they grab him a denarius, specifically. And through this coin, he demonstrates, first of all, our obligation to society. So that's a photo of the coin that Jesus would have been handed. Not the exact coin that Jesus was handed, because we don't know which one that is. But that's one of the many denariuses that were in circulation at that time. I've actually handled one of these coins. I had it passed around a room while I was in a room so that we could all look at it and see it and feel it. There was something quite exciting about this. And you can actually buy these on the internet for around £500. But its value in those days, it was a day's wages. So it's not an insignificant coin, but it's also not the most expensive coin. But the point Jesus makes is that this coin has the image of Caesar on it. And if it has Caesar's image on it, it belongs to Caesar. And we're to give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. So Jesus is saying there that if we are part of society, then we have obligations to that society, including things like taxes. And as humans, we can't live without some kind of society. I don't think the Bible gives a blueprint for what exactly that society looks like in terms of the world governments and so on. But we need to live within some sort of society. And so Jesus is saying that if we receive the benefits of society, of living in society, then we should also contribute to the needs of that society through the obligations that society places on us, such as taxes. Now that's all pretty obvious. That's all quite straightforward. Except there are levels of meaning going on here that you might not know if you didn't know what was on that coin and if you didn't know what else was going on. So on that coin, on the left-hand side, that is a picture of the Caesar at the time whose name was Tiberius. And the writing that goes around the coin was Latin, at least I'm pretty sure it was. And I don't read Latin, by the way, so I've had to look this up. Some of you might do Latin, and that's great. Clever people that you are, but not people like me. We don't talk Latin. But that around the coin goes something like this. T. Caesar Divi Org F. Augustus. which sounds like nonsense, doesn't it? There's a lot of abbreviating going on there. So the T, the TI, that you can see just down there in the bottom right-hand side, that is short for Tiberius. That was the name of the Caesar at the time, Tiberius. And then the whole thing going round it, it translates as this: Caesar Augustus Tiberius. That's his name. And then the other side, son of the divine Augustus. And by the way, Augustus means revered one or majestic one, which was a title that was applied to the Caesars around this time. But the point that I want you to grasp here is that around this time, the Caesars, the Roman rulers, they were being considered already at this time to be in some way divine. Even if it was upon their death, as was often the case, they were voted by the Roman rulers to be divine upon the death of the Caesar. And sometimes they were even considered divine in their lifetime as well. At least that's how they were regarded. But certainly what this coin is stating is that during Tiberius's time, his father was regarded as divine. His father was regarded as a kind of God. And that meant something slightly more nuanced to what we mean when we say God. But nevertheless, he was regarded as some sort of divine figure. That meant that Tiberius was claiming on his coin that he was the son of a god. And that point is strengthened on the other side of the coin as well. This is the picture, most probably of his mother, and the inscription on it is Pontiff Maxim. You can possibly just about make out the words Pontiff Maxim, which essentially meant high priest. Which means for the emperor Tiberius, he was claiming not only that his father was a god, but that his mum was the high priest. But for the first century Jew, it was very clear there is only one God who reigns supreme over all. One God who is the Lord. And Jews could not participate in the worship of other gods. It's a big problem of the first half of the Bible. They could not worship these other gods who weren't true gods anyway. There was only one God. And handling this coin was not just a way of participating in the ruling class of the Romans who've subjected the Jews, but it was also, handling this coin was also, it was kind of participating in this veneration of the Caesars, in this worship of the Caesars as being divine. But here's the snag. Who brought the coin? Jesus didn't pull it out of his pockets. He didn't get his disciples to pull the coin out of their pockets. He said to the people asking the question, trying to trap him, "Get me a coin." It was those very Jews that asked the question that went and got the coin, that pulled the coin out of their own pockets. And by having the coin at their disposal, they showed that they were part of this society. They showed that they were part of this nation that had subjected the Jewish nation. By producing the coin, they showed that they were part of this state that worshipped the state leader. They had tried to trap Jesus, but Jesus, by asking them for a coin, by showing them whose image was on it, he got them caught in their own trap. The Pharisees in particular, who were one of the groups here, they were supposed to be the purists, but they're not very pure. So in doing all of this, Jesus confirms that we do have an obligation to society. And that includes paying taxes. Not fiddling the system with our taxes and trying to hide money so that we don't have to pay taxes, but contributing to society, being honest with our taxes. That's one aspect of it that Jesus is very clear on. And if we're Christians, we can't just decide that because the state isn't very Christian, in our opinion, we don't have to contribute. We can't just decide that for ourselves and therefore withhold our taxes or withhold other obligations within society. No, God has ordained that societies would form. And we can't necessarily expect that our governments will be Christian governments. It's not like the Roman government was a very Christian government, was it, after all? Not at this time. So in the variety of ways that societies and governments have been organized and run themselves, God is sovereign over them, and even over the corrupt governments that don't follow biblical principles. God is still sovereign and expects us to pay our obligations to societies even when there is a level of corruption. So we as Christians, we can't just retreat. We can't pull out of society. There is a place for calling out the wrongs of government, absolutely. There is a place for recognizing and calling out societal sins. We should be people who seek justice on a societal level. And there are godly ways of doing those things as well as ungodly ways of doing them. But what we can't do is retreat. What we can't do is disengage from society. Jesus expected the people to have a coin because they were members of society. Have a think about in the first half of the Bible, when God's people went into exile as a time of punishment in Babylon, they were told to seek the good of the city. They were told to play an active part within this enemy nation that had conquered them. Think of the man Daniel who became a royal advisor. Think of Nehemiah, who was cupbearer to the king. Think of Esther, who actually became queen, married to the king of that nation. Without compromising on the truth, they played their part in as much as they could, even in that society that had conquered them. Now, that's going to look different for each one of us. We all play different roles. Here's a few ideas. It might be being a governor in a school. It might be being a member of a community council. It might be getting involved in local politics. It could be through food banks or possibly being a committee member for a park. Maybe being involved in a community project that's going on. You could run a pub quiz. You can run a local art group in your community centre. There are all kinds of ways that we can fulfill our obligations to society. And a good place to start is by getting to know your neighbours if you don't already know them. Get to know the needs of those around you and see if there are any ways that you can meet those needs, even if it's just of being a good friend to someone. So the image on the coin, it marks the coin out as belonging to the state. Therefore, give it to the state. But there's an image to be found elsewhere that talks about our obligation to God. There is an image of God that means that we should give to God what belongs to God as he finishes off. And that image is found in us, which shows, secondly, that we have an obligation to God. Where is the image of God? Well, it's in us. It's upon us as humans. Right at the beginning of the Bible, right in the first chapter of the Bible, Genesis 1, it says this: "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female, he created them." So a coin bears the image of the ruler, I wonder, has anyone seen one of the King Charles coins yet? They will be out before long, I'm sure. But the image on the coin shows that the coin has worth, has value, comes with the authority of the person upon whose image is stamped on the coin. And likewise, as humans, we bear God's image in order to show our worth, our value, to show that we are to be under the authority of the one who has put his image upon us. He put his image on us so that we could live for him, so that we could fulfill what he asked us to do in caring for this world in the way that he wants us to. In order to thrive as humanity, we have his image. And by the way, that's all humans. As is specified in the first chapter, it's males and females. But it's also in the other ways that we distinguish person from person. Skin color, wealth level, education level, abilities. All of these ways that might mark us out as being different, we are all under God's image, in his image, all equally valuable and of worth to God. But because we're made in God's image, we belong to him. We rightfully belong to God. And if we rightfully belong to God, then we therefore have an obligation to him. And that obligation that he has for us is that we do as he has asked us to do. That we live for him. That we love him. And that we love his world that he's given to us to care for. You see, there's another nuance that I think Jesus was probing at. With the image of the emperor, the image is on the coin, and therefore the coin is demanded. What does the state require of you? The coin, taxes, here, have it. With the image of God, the image is on our lives, and therefore our lives are demanded. Not just our coins, but our whole lives are to be given in obligation to God. That's what the greatest commandment in the first half of the Bible is all about. It says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. In other words, love God completely with the entirety of who you are. And the snag for us is that we aren't able to do that. You see, the image of God within us has been distorted. It's still there on every human being, but it's been broken. You see, we love ourselves more than we love God, or we love stuff in this world more than we love God, or we love other people more than we love God. And if we're honest, God is right down there on the pecking order of what we do love. So the image of God has been distorted in us, and it's been distorted by us. Nevertheless, because it is still there, God still has a claim upon us. But when Jesus was born, as God, he took on humanity. And so he took upon himself the image that is placed upon every one of us. He shared in our image in that sense. And yet he was also God. And so the image of God on him was not distorted. He was the image of God because he lived as God on this earth. He was able to bear God's image perfectly, never failing to love God, his Father, in the way that he should, because as Father and Son, as one God, they were in perfect union all the time. And he lived a life loving God's world, loving the people of this world, living for God. And the reason he did that was to restore God's image within us, what we have distorted, to make it perfect once again. Have you ever done the experiment where you get a grubby old coin, you put it in a cup or something, and you pour Coke in it? And because of everything that's in Coke, that means you probably shouldn't drink it, it cleans the coin, doesn't it? The coin has all of those layers of dirt removed on it. And so the image of the Queen, because you've probably got old coins with the Queen's face on it, if you put those in Coke, even if you can barely see the image of the Queen beforehand, being left in Coke overnight, it means you can see the image of the Queen gleaming, sparkling, as if it were brand new. And that's what Jesus does for us. The layers of dirt, of rebellion in sin that we lay upon God's image that's on us, that distorts God's image within us, that's dissolved in Jesus. When we're immersed in Jesus, the image is restored. When we entrust our lives to Jesus, when we belong to Him and follow Him, then the forgiveness comes and cleanses us and restores the image of God within us. So it's when we're in Jesus that we're able to fulfill our obligation to God, to live for God, to love Him, to live in this world in right ways as we're called to do so. Look, far from being a strategy from just getting out of a tricky question, this trap that Jesus was put in, it enabled Him to talk about who we are as people, our identity. We are people that belong to this world, that belong to each other in a collective society. Think again about how God made the first two people, Adam and Eve. And when He made Eve to join Adam because it was not good for him to be alone. He's not merely talking about romantic relationships, but it's talking broader than that, because it is not good for us to be alone in a societal sense. We need each other. If we're Christians, we need to be participants in society, at whatever level that means for us. But even more than that, this gave Jesus an opportunity to talk about our cosmic purpose, what we're made for as people. That we are made to belong to God, to be those who love Him and live for Him. And how this is made possible through Jesus, through Him restoring the image of God within us, through His forgiving love that comes to us when we first trust in Him. Now, maybe we've never realized what it means to live out our original design purpose as human beings. If not, then it's as simple as coming to trust in Jesus, coming to recognize that He came to us to bring us back to God. It's confessing our failure, our sin, and receiving His forgiveness that cleanses us. Our final song that we'll sing in a few moments, it really captures this when it applies the words of Jesus to us. It says, "Who the Son, Jesus, sets free is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am." You see, freedom is found in being a child of God, which is what it is to have the image of God restored within us. If this is something you want to think about more, I want to give you 3 ways that you can respond to this. The first is to keep on coming on Sunday mornings. We are always talking about Jesus. And so if you want to find out more about who Jesus is and what it means to follow Him, that's what we do every Sunday. So keep coming to our morning gatherings every Sunday morning. The second of those is to explore more on your own. I've left these little pieces of paper lying around. On each row of chairs, there should be one of these pieces of paper. Take that with you. And if you'd like to find out more on your own, at home, in your own time, then I'd commend to you the 3-2-1 course. It's discovering life according to Jesus, and there are 8 videos to watch over 4 sessions with questions to reflect as you go through. And you can look that up on the website. Let's watch a little trailer for that if we can.
Perspective is everything. So how do you see life? We want to give you a chance to slow down, get your bearings, and look again. Welcome to 3-2-1.
This is life according to Jesus.
Take all the time you need.
So if you go to 321course.com, you'll be able to do the course in your own time. But thirdly, it might be helpful for you to do this with other people. And after Easter, we're going to be running a group that will be doing a different course called the Christianity Explored course. We've run it many times in our church. It's always a brilliant way of finding out more about who Jesus is. On the reverse of that piece of paper, there are details about that course. It's 7 sessions that are video content and discussion-based. And it's a great opportunity to look at who Jesus is, why he came, and why that really matters. And if you'd like to go along to that course, we'll be running it after Easter. And if you're interested, text Mark, one of our elders who will be running the course, and his phone number is on that piece of paper.